There are many benefits in making course adjustments if you're willing to learn from them rather than spend all your time judging what you have just done, what you could have done, should have done, would have done, might have done, all those other things that will just lead you to getting stuck, frustrated, and uncertain. We will discuss course adjustments, the benefits, and more on episode 769 of today's Antidote.
Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote features a healthy dose of thought-provoking insights and information for business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and nonprofit professionals. Each day since March of 2020, this program has offered that one thing to help you continue on your own unique pathway to success. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
Good morning, Tom. Happy Wednesday, February 8th.
Good morning. Thank you, Bob. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm a little perky. I'm a little wound up.
I can tell. A couple extra cups of coffee this morning?
No, I listened to a song I really like 5 times this morning. Do you ever do that?
Sometimes. What was the song?
Bad Habits by Steve Lacy. He played it in the Grammys, and I found a recording of it from the Grammys, and I've just been sort of playing it over and over and over.
Nice.
Yeah, funny how that peps you up sometimes.
You know? Yeah, no doubt. I have that as well. I do have a song that I think about that. I don't do it that often, although I think about it.
What's the last song you used to pep you up?
Have you heard the song Champion by Carrie Underwood and Ludacris?
Yes. Good one. Yeah. We'll have to put that. I'll put a question up in the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. The song that pumps you up, that your go-to song to pump you up. We'll see what people have.
Yeah, I think that's a good question.
I'll see if they even put links to it, because then you can listen to it.
Yes, I like that.
Remember in the old days when we first started this, Fridays when we were all home at COVID, I did the DJ Fridays where people could put songs and we put songs throughout the day. I miss those
remember
days.
that. The days.
The days.
Well, and it would be interesting of what causes them to do that.
What causes who to do what? Sorry, you lost me.
What causes, if people share that song, like what was the impetus for you to do that today?
I was up early. I'm trying to shift a couple of pretty big things, and I just needed a little pep in my step.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fascinating, it's kind of a personal thing that you do or whatever. And I think it's one of those things that it relates to a lot of what we're talking about as you're on your pathway, because one of the challenges, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in the coming weeks, is what happens when you get stuck and what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
So often I think we get stuck and we don't have that out, that way to get out of this, that way to say,
clear the fog.
I've recognized that I'm in this pattern. What is my pattern interrupter?
Mm-hmm.
That
I see what you did there.
that helps me sort of shift gears. And I know we've talked about this before. Because I had that conversation with a whole group of people. It's like, okay, what are you going to do when you get stuck?
Right.
And we help them work through what is your thing? And, if you knew you were working on something, like here's an advanced process that you might want to consider, is that if you knew you were working on something that was hard, difficult, challenging, and you knew that there was a decent chance that you were going to get stuck or frustrated or overwhelmed at some point. And if you had that song queued up on your phone,
mm-hmm.
so that you were prepared for, okay, I'm not going to let this get me stuck.
Right.
That I'm going to power through this, whatever it takes. And if it takes me hitting that song 5 times, I think that's a fascinating tip for this morning. How about that?
There you go. I wish I'd saved it for a Facebook Live in the Ring of Renegades Facebook group, but maybe I will. You never know. Could happen.
Or maybe I will as well.
Okay.
We'll
All
see
right.
what happens. It's interesting that yours has the word bad habits and mine has the words champion. That's interesting.
I don't choose it based on the lyrics as much as just the sound.
Okay.
Which is weird because most of the songs I like are because of the lyrics. So listen, well, you'll see the link. I'll put the link to the song. Listen to the song because it's about a guy who realizes that the girl liked him all along and he never knew it. And it's too late, which I could certainly.
That's a motivating song, huh?
Huh?
And that's
I like the sound. It's peppy. It just,
okay.
What can I say? It doesn't. That's the beauty of music, right? You don't have to have a logic to it. It can just be that song. I knew someone that listened to Star Spangled Banner, and that really motivated them. They're like the patriotism. They exuded patriotism, and they felt like they could do anything.
Wow, fascinating.
Who knows?
Well, I would encourage people who are watching this now or watching it later, put in the comments what your song is. What is that song that motivates you, gets you going, or keeps you from being stuck, that allows you to move forward? I think that'd be a great thing to do.
Or go to the Ring Renegades Facebook group because we're going to put it out to 1,200 people.
Yes, or join us there. All right, everyone. Good morning and welcome. Kind of a delayed welcome to today's Antidote, our daily broadcast and podcast. And while we had a long conversation about songs that motivate us, that's not the topic for today. As I mentioned, we're talking about course adjustments. Interesting. It does relate to course adjustments because that is an adjustment you could make in your day, is hit your song and move forward. So we're going to talk a little bit about the benefits today. And as we go through that conversation, if you have thoughts or ideas that you would like to share, please feel free to put them in the comments. We know it'll add value to our show and likely have an impact. Typically, it leads us in different directions. Sometimes it causes us to adjust the course of the show. And there's value that's a part of it. There are benefits to it. So please feel free to share your thoughts and ideas. At the conclusion of that conversation, Bob and I will each offer our one thing, our today's antidote. That thing that we hope will help you figure out if you're struggling with your course adjustments and can't quite see the benefits, then you'll be able to figure out how to take the next step. And it may have been that you have your song up and ready. Fascinating how that worked out. And because we know it'll add value and it might be exactly the message someone else is looking for. So we encourage you to share your thoughts, ideas, and your antidote if you have one. Before we dive into that conversation, though, each morning we do our celebrations. And Bob, what are you celebrating today?
I am celebrating the power of music to take us out of our funk, to move us from a place of frustration to a place of possibility.
And Edward is chiming in. I'm not sure that this is his motivating song. He does say, though, the Star Spangled Banner always brings a tear to his eye and a lump in my throat.
There you go. And I think it also, for me at least, it reminds me of a lot of things that have gone before me to give me the opportunities that I have. So at times when I listen to it, I think of all the people that have put their lives on the line, all the people that have believed in things that make it possible for me to even be able to do a program like this with you without fear, without worry about what we say or what we do.
You do this show without fear or worry?
I try.
Different kind of fear and worry than you're discussing.
Yes. Wow, it's a good program today. We got a lot.
Starting off hot and heavy. We'll see how it plays out.
All right. What are you celebrating today? You caught me off guard with that one, by the way.
That's part of my job, I think, is to.
I think so.
Usually I'm the what do they call it? I'm the straight person in this show. Sometimes I have to, mix it up a little bit.
I like it.
My celebration this morning is that I had a really interesting call yesterday with a client that I thought was, it's one of those things that really motivates me, I think, is trying to help people work through some of the challenges that they have or the questions that they are struggling to figure out. And it fascinates me how quickly time goes by in those conversations, and before you know it, you've gone a long way. Kind of like our conversation this morning. Before we knew it, we were fairly deep into something and providing an antidote, not necessarily for what we were going to talk about. And we provided a nugget there for everyone. And I think that was, those conversations are invaluable to me. And I mentioned yesterday that I had this, the start of a strategic planning conversation yesterday, and fascinating organization and great conversations and interesting discussions. Look at all those adjectives I threw in there. And there was a point, though, there were a couple things that were said, and it was fascinating because there was a comment made about how people have so much to do and everything is important. Well, you know where that likely took me. So I paused and I calculated what the impact of my next statement was going to be. Because it was a statement made by a founder of the organization. And I said, well, if everything is important, nothing is important. And there was this pause that was fascinating, because it was, to me, like I feel like I hear that all the time, or I say it all the time.
I was going to say, you say it all the time. You don't hear it all the time. You say it all the time, Tom.
Well, I do say it, and then I do get to hear it. And someone else in the room said, well, that's something interesting to think about. Huh. So it was like one of those moments where you actually felt like maybe I provided a little extra value in here that I wasn't necessarily expecting. And I think that part of our role sometimes in those things is to ask questions that get people to consider something different, and maybe to challenge or push them a little bit. Like I was a little nervous because I sort of felt like I was challenging this person. And I also know that sometimes that's when we have the greatest impact and can have the most change can happen, is when we get people to really consider their perspectives differently. So that's my celebration. Great conversations with clients.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah. All right. So course adjustments. We've been talking all week about it. Yesterday, we talked about the challenges, which you were fired up about. And so go back and listen to that if you like. We thought it was a really interesting conversation. Monday, we talked a little bit about what it is. And overall, this is we've been going on this 17-week, I think, journey. Interesting number. Around your pathway. And so we had talked about checkpoints. And one of the things that come after checkpoints is there are options to consider. One of those options being your adjusting course. So do you want to kick us off talking about the benefits, Bob?
Yeah, I would love to. Yesterday, I did a Facebook Live in the Ring of Renegades Facebook group where I talked about this whole idea of course adjustments and how they work, and that, we want a straight line and sometimes it zigs and zags. And I think the real benefits of course adjustments are it helps us get closer to the target. So, not that long ago, a couple months ago, I was showing someone how to play darts. And I'm no expert at darts at all, but I knew the fundamentals. And I was able to at least hit the target. And this person was really struggling with hitting the target. They were hitting the wall, they were hitting the floor because they didn't have the right release point. And as we started talking through it and they started to refine the release point, it's like, nope, a little higher, a little lower, a little higher. They got closer to the target. And I think that's what course adjustments are really about. This person was making very subtle adjustments. I mean, you're talking millimeters of difference in how you throw that dart. And it makes a huge difference in where it goes. And I think that's course adjustments to me. And the benefit is if you make lesser adjustments, you can identify more what may or may not be going the way you anticipated. And I know I keep saying I've undertaken something in the last couple of days and I'm excited about it. It did not yield incredible results yesterday, despite the fact that there was effort put into it. And I had to adjust my mental state around adjusting the course, because my first reaction was, this is a bad decision. What was I thinking? My second reaction was, okay, well, if that hadn't happened yesterday, it wouldn't have happened at all because I wasn't going to do it. And then the third reaction was, I know better. This is going to take some time for the process to be adjusted to work the way it needs to work to achieve my goals. And so I went through this mental process. And in the process of going through that analysis of how I was thinking about it, I came up with a couple of course adjustments that were very minute. It involved working with this other person and asking them a couple of questions that I hadn't thought to ask before. And one of the questions I asked actually led to a different outcome on the next time they did this thing for me, because they had new information. And I wouldn't, had I thrown the whole thing away, who knows? I wouldn't have learned anything. But because I was able to step back and say, okay, what's a very minor thing that might be off here? Oh, I didn't account for this. And I guess I can just be really clear about it because it's so vague. I've got someone doing some cold calling for my business, and I gave him a script for the cold calls, and that's all well and good. What I didn't give him a script for was voicemails. So he didn't know what to do with the voicemail. Didn't think of it. He's making calls. You make calls, you talk to people. That's why you call. Didn't think about the fact of, I think his first 8 calls, 7 led to voicemails. So the course correction could have been, well, we're never going to talk to a person. This is a waste of time. Never mind. Or, voicemail. What can we do with the voicemail that would cause someone to want to call back? So I had some information because I've done that in the past, and I was able to apply that and talk this person through that. So there's a case to me that it was a course adjustment. It wasn't total correction. It wasn't throwing it all out and stopping. It was, new information. Wow. 7 of 8 calls led to voicemail. Need to account for that. Does that make sense at all?
It does. As you were talking about it, though, I was wondering, I'm contemplating of whether that's a course adjustment. I think it's one of the things that often happens is, we don't think about all of the steps when we set a goal or we decide on an action. We set some of the ones that come to us immediately. And, you're thinking, okay, I'm trying to get more in touch with more people. My goal is to get in touch with more people and have more appointments.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have the time to do it, so I'm going to have someone else do it for me. That hasn't changed. So your course is still the same. What, though, is you've gained new knowledge and you needed to add additional steps that you hadn't considered. Like, thinking about that, I would ask the question is, okay, do you have a tree lined up? And I would imagine you do that. Okay, what happens if you get their administrative assistant or their screener, whoever that might be? What happens if you get the person? What if they say, I'm interested, I'm not interested? I might be interested, but now's not a good time. Like, all of those things that you think about. And
everything except voicemail was on that tree.
And I think that's one of the challenges that happens, right? Is that, okay, we've got this plan in place based on what we know in the moment and based on our perspective. Because even you would have had the knowledge that you knew that they were going to be. You could have, if you had thought about it differently, you could have been like, of course, you're going to get voicemail. Everybody lets things go. If it's a number I don't know, it goes to voicemail.
Right.
For me. If they don't leave a voicemail, I guess there's no need for me to call back. And so, I think it's that you only know what you know in the moment. And sometimes we forget what we know. And so to me, that's just adding another piece to the current course. It's not like you didn't say, oh, hey, you know what? If you see a number like this, don't bother calling. Right. You probably gave them the direction. Every number we're going to call until you say, oh, if you see a number that's 212, I think that's New York. If it's a New York number, don't bother to call because I know they're not interested. Like, to me, that's an adjustment. That's like, oh, we had this plan. We were doing this plan. I think you were just adding some additional information to it. And I think that's, so I don't know whether that's an adjustment or not in my mind.
It's funny because last week about this time we were debating what a course correction was. And we were at this point having a healthy discussion, debate about what a correction looks like. And now we're having a debate over what an adjustment looks like. I think to me, what makes what I was talking about being an adjustment is the idea that I thought I knew all the steps. New information comes in and I've got to add a step and adjust my expectations. If 7 of 8 calls are going to be voicemail, that changes the whole game. That, I for better or worse, I think my expectation was, because, you just want to be optimistic. You're going to call 8 people and you're going to talk to 8 people and 8 people are going to say, oh my God, this is amazing. Now, that's not realistic, but I think in some little part of my head, that was the hope. To realize that 7 of the 8 go to voicemail, I think the course adjustment is recognizing that early on and taking an action to accommodate for that versus leaving it alone, going, well, if it goes to voicemail, don't leave them out. Don't do nothing, right? Because I think about it now, 7 of those 8, the call was made and nothing was done. Today, calls will be made, and if it goes to voicemail, there'll be a different approach.
Oh, so the person just hung up if they got a voicemail,
or they left a very innocuous message.
Okay.
It wasn't a thought out part of the overall marketing plan message. And I'm not blaming this person. That's totally on me. And you live and you learn. Now, if I ever did this again, or if I coach someone through it, I'd be like, hey, by the way, the majority of calls go to voicemail. Believe it or not, the message that may be the most important one is the voicemail message. Oh, really? You think? I didn't know that. Now I know that, and now I can apply that. And that has implications for other things, because as I think through my calling patterns, I get a lot of voicemail.
Sure.
And the discussion in my head yesterday was, how can I make voicemail, when I leave a voicemail, more powerful in every case? Because like you said, you're not going to pick up a number you don't know. And more people aren't even listening to the voicemail. They're reading the transcript of the voicemail. Sure. So then it's, how do you really entice them with the first sentence? And it can't be, hi, I was looking for Bob. How are you doing today? Because you've lost him.
Well, then you know that this, like when I get, are you a business owner? That I hang up on those almost immediately. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things about it is that even whether we consider that, it's an adjustment or it's just an added step, the benefit is that you had an opportunity to learn something that you can move forward with, rather than, even though it sounds like you did a little bit of judging of the overall plan in the moment.
Well, I think you have to in some regards, right?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I think that
if I hadn't evaluated the overall plan yesterday on the first day of this, I wouldn't have been in a position to.
Different. What was the word you used?
Okay. Yeah, you're right.
You evaluated it. You did. Initially, when you talked about it, when you first went through it, if you go back and listen, you were like, oh my God, why am I, like, was this really worth it? You actually made some of those comments, because I was thinking in my head, you had said on Monday you were going to do this, and you had said that you weren't going to truly evaluate it until the first at the end of the month, the first Friday of every month. That's your evaluation day. And so and at the same time, you had told me before that you're going to check in with this person every day just to see what's going on, which I think is, especially with a new project, is worthwhile. Until the person's like, oh, I wish you would stop checking in on me. And you're like, okay, we've moved past some of the early challenges, and now we're moving forward. And I think that once you got past that initial feeling, you now learned, which I think is one of the biggest benefits of any adjustment that we make, is that it gives us a chance to differently understand what's going on. And I think for you, it'd be a fascinating, again, so what you've learned is a lot of voicemails are going to happen, which means that to have maybe the expected results that you desire, they might take longer. Because even if you you're not getting that, oh, I have somebody on the phone, they're committing to a time for a connection. There's one. You
Right.
might be getting voicemail message, return call, which you may or may not pick up right away, which might lead to another voice message, which means to another thing. So
Correct.
the overall process going forward might look different. And again, you've never done this in this way.
Correct.
And so this is it's an opportunity for you to learn from it and then figure out how you can leverage using that learning in the future.
And it's interesting because as I talk about this appointment setting and cold calling, I get a lot of people that I mention it to. They're like, hey, I'm really interested in that. I've always wondered about that. Hey, can you let me know how that works for you? So it's an area that people have an interest that they haven't all pursued. And it's kind of out there in the field of, I'd really like to know this, but I don't know where to go for that resource. So in some ways, I feel like I'm literally charting my own course, creating my own pathway, and there are people that want to follow behind me based on how I see it, which is great. I mean, that's not a bad thing. It's interesting because people are like, oh, I've always wondered if that should be part of my steps in my process. Let me know where it takes you. And if it takes you where you thought it would take you, I might consider it to see if it takes me where it takes me.
And the caution I would offer with all of that is that you're unique, they're unique. Yep. Just because it works for you or doesn't work for you.
Correct.
Doesn't mean that, and so I think one of the things for you to consider as you go back and share that information with them is how do you share it in a way that you're sharing your knowledge, experience, and perspective, not just the results.
Oh, absolutely. That and what I've shared with 2 or 3 people so far is the process.
Yeah.
Because I don't really have the results. So at this point, it's really easy not to talk about the results.
Well, and again,
like, how do you find the person? What do you have them say? Who do they call? There's a lot of logistics that people just don't understand it. So it's a lot of that.
And yet for a lot of people, that's not valuable information. It's valuable. It's not top of mind valuable because all they want to know is did it work or not?
Right. Well, and you get this about podcasting, right? Sure. How many people say to you, hey, how hard is it to do a podcast? How many people listen? How much money did you make from your podcast? I mean, I get that probably once a week, if not more. And it's like, well, this is what we do and this is why we do it. I don't talk to them about the money. I don't talk to them about the results because frankly, you're right. That doesn't matter because their results could be very different and they're coming at it from their perspective.
Correct.
Someone else could do today's antidote and they could do it a different way than you and I do. And it could be very, very, very successful. It could be whatever.
Good. Depends on what their definition of success would be.
Correct. So you got a one thing this morning, Tom? When we talk about course adjustments and the many, many, many benefits.
Yeah, I think that, I would start with it's all about learning.
Okay.
And almost if you can't accept that, why take the journey anyway? I don't know. I think about that was an immediate thought that came to mind. And
that's a judgment.
Well, I think it's a sharing of information.
No, it's a judgment if you say if you can't accept the learning, why do it?
I think it's a question. Why do it? What's the point? Is it about results? Okay, can you control your results? No. So if it's only about results, why do it? It's a question, I think.
Okay.
And I think that it's because then why would you adjust? If you didn't, unless you just thought, okay, if I adjust, I'm going to get different results. And the results are the only thing that matter. You'll be adjusting, and if you haven't seen it, go to the Ring of Renegades and watch Bob's Facebook Live yesterday. You'll see at the end what it looks like if all you care about is the results. it'll be a squiggly mess on a whiteboard.
Now you ruined it. Yeah. You had a great tease and then you gave it away.
Wow.
You tease them and then they go to it. Tom, come on. We've talked about this.
Well, there's a lot of other things in there that they would find of value to how you get to that point, and
Thank you.
what might be some other things that you could do differently. And I think so often that's what it is. We just make an adjustment because we want a different result. And we don't often stop and take the time to think about what does that look like. And what have we gained from it? Because I think so often the gain that people are looking for is different results.
Mm-hmm.
And not how am I going to learn differently from this. And I don't know if did I talk about this yesterday? If I did, you can stop me. We were listening to this recording for this program that we're working through and talking about, we're doing also there's a program that helps you sort of look at Facebook ads and some other ways of marketing your efforts. And they said one of the challenges is that people put in so many variables that you don't really know, like, what was the one thing that was helpful to do things differently, or where you saw, okay, here's this information and then I compare it to what I do with this information. And I think, that to me is one of the benefits, is that when you are able to sort of isolate a variable, make an adjustment, and then see what that one adjustment on that one variable was, you have a chance to learn. It's like, oh, okay, maybe my audience is differently interested in this color scheme, this image, this language. If you just like, oh, that result isn't what I expected, I have to change the whole thing.
Right.
Completely different language, completely different image. And you're like, oh, so if you start getting different results, you're like, well, I don't know what the difference was. Whatever it was before either really worked or didn't work. And
Right.
This is working differently. And, I think the benefits are really taking the time to understand and learn from any adjustment you make, rather than judge it typically only based on the prior results or the current results.
Well, I would go a little different direction. I like that a lot. But I think two things that happen when we adjust our course that's really important is, one, we have new confidence. I had new confidence yesterday when I realized, hey, we're going to get voicemails. What's that customer experience like when they get voicemail? How can I not just entice them into calling back, but how can I serve them in that moment? Because that's the first time they're going to hear about my company. So what does that look like? It was like, okay, this is what I want them to get from that experience. And so I went into about 12 o'clock, like, oh, this is really bad. I don't know what I'm going to do. And by 3 o'clock, I had figured out what could be said. And I was excited about it. I had this might just be a blessing in disguise, because other people might be getting voicemails and not leaving powerful messages. There's an opportunity here for me. And then it also refined my system. The system of calling, as you said, the tree. There was a missing piece of that tree of what to do in this situation. And because of that, it was going to affect the whole process. And so often I think course adjustment is figuring out that missing piece versus course correction, which is that tree is a failure. Goodbye. End of calling, and we move on. And I talked to someone about this yesterday afternoon, and they were like, oh, I guess that experiment failed. I was like, we don't even have results to I'm not even sure you could call it an experiment yet. It's a theory. It's a hypothesis. And
it's an action. You took an action.
It's an action, but it's an action that's not fully, matured. If you judge a tree, I had a tree in a yard one time and it was going up at a really bad angle. And everyone's like, oh, you should cut that down. You should cut that down. Well, lo and behold, over time, the tree straightened itself out and it became a beautiful tree.
Wait, you mean results change over time?
They do. And it's easy to look at something and say, this is not going to be very effective. This is not what I'm looking for. And then suddenly over 3-4 years, for whatever reason, the sun turned, it got its act together, it straightened out, and it's a beautiful tree. I think that's what we have when we make course adjustments versus the big correction, which is, okay, end of cold calling, done. Did that for a day, made 8 calls, got 7 voicemails. It's all over. By the way, the 8th, just so you know, was a hang up.
It's funny you say that. I was thinking about in your tree is like, okay, what's the process for somebody who you call, they answer, and then they hang up?
Yeah. So, and that was another one that I didn't really plan for. I planned for a hang up, but not getting, or I planned for someone not getting through, but not for a hang up. And again, I'm learning. I haven't done this before.
Because you're taking the time to learn from it.
Correct. And I'm also using it as an opportunity to look at the customer experience. It's not about the results right now. It's about how can I make this, if you are engaging with my company through the phone at this point in time, what's the best way I can serve you in that moment? If that's a hang up, is it a follow-up call right back. Hey, I'm sorry, we got hung up. Something must be going on with your phone or my phone. I wanted to make sure I got through to you. Or is it next?
Right. I mean, those are options.
And I don't know what the answer is. We'll actually try both options. Because who knows?
Yeah, it's possible.
And someone else may know what they've done and how it worked for them, but I'm not convinced that will work the same way for me, as you pointed out.
Sure.
It's my unique pathway.
Correct.
So
I like it.
All right. Nice.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for being a part of our show today. Of course, if you have your antidote you'd like to share, please don't hesitate. Put it in. Share it in the comments, because we know it'll have impact on someone that's out there. And it's fascinating. I'm going to share this quick story before I do that. Yesterday when I was talking with this group, they were, I'm going to say this, passing judgment on their social media based on how many likes they got. And it was interesting because the person who kind of is in charge of it, but also does some external outreach, said, we only got like 1 or 2 likes on this post. Yet when I went to this meeting, everybody was telling me about how great the post was. And I said, that's a really good thing to consider, is that just that we can't always know the impact of our actions based on who gives us feedback. There are a lot of other people and I would say that for every person who came up to you and said they really enjoyed that post, there are likely 3 to 5 to 8 to 10 times that many people who saw it, were impacted by it, and just chose not to act to let you know for whatever reason. So I think that when we start judging what we share based on how many people respond to it, we might be missing an opportunity to share our value. So please feel free to share your thoughts and ideas and your value, because we know that it'll have impact on others. If you happen to be listening to our podcast, we understand there's no place to share those thoughts and ideas. So please come join us in the Ring of Renegades Facebook group, where we are helping people find the strategies and systems they need to have the confidence to take their next step along their own unique pathway to success. So we look forward to seeing you inside the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. If not, we'll see you tomorrow morning about 7 a.m. Eastern time for our next episode of today's Antidote. Have a great day, everyone.
Hey, and whatever you do, embrace the renegading you. It is worth it this beautiful Wednesday morning.
And I bet when you go out and embrace the renegade in you, the day is going to be different. Just wait and see. All right, everybody. Have a great day. We'll see you soon. Thanks for listening to today's Antidote, powered by the Renegade Success Network. The Renegade Success Network helps you confidently create your own unique pathway to success. To learn more about the Renegade Success Network and how you can take your next step, follow us on Twitter, connect on LinkedIn, or join the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. For full details on how you can join our community, go to renegadesuccessnetwork.com. Embrace the renegade in you. Oops. Sorry about that, folks. I was sleeping a little bit.